Good evening, everyone. I'm Louise Tickle. I'm a freelance journalist and I report on the family justice system. I'm also the director of a new organisation called Scrutiny, which I set up to help reporters and what I'm calling citizen investigators to hold the state to account. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us for this, which is the third in our series of webinars looking at law, justice and the spaces between. So over January, February and March this year, we've been discussing different aspects of transparency and the role of reporting in the operation of the justice system, and involving in that whether current processes and norms and attitudes can be changed for the better. The whole series is being hosted and has been organised beautifully by Bath Publishing, so a big thank you to David Chaplin for doing that. A little bit of background. In the first event, we looked at the question of whether having observers in court changes how justice is done. And then 2 weeks ago, we asked what is lost and perhaps importantly, who gains when the state stops people from talking about their experiences within the justice system. And if you want to see either of those, there are recordings which are available on the Bath Publishing website. Tonight, for this third discussion, we're going to be looking at accountability and how we keep the justice system and the state honest. So open justice is meant to be a watchword for our system. We're meant to be able to see justice being done, but does the simple fact of a hearing that's held in public result in any meaningful accountability? And how public really are our courts? I'm sure we're going to be touching on how public they are during the pandemic as well. To talk about all of this, I've got a great panel who've got all their own views and experiences to share. So with me this evening, and I've put this in alphabetical order, we have Tor Butler-Cole QC. She's a barrister specialising in inquests and court of protection cases. Julie Doughty, who is a trustee of the charity The Transparency Project, and Julie is a senior lecturer in law at Cardiff Law School. Mark Hanna is Emeritus Fellow at the Department of Journalism Studies at Sheffield University. Tristan Kirk is the courts correspondent for the Evening Standard, and Marienna Pope-Weideman is a bereaved relative who campaigns for justice for Gaia. Thank you. Marienna, over to you, because you were nodding.
Yeah, I just very much agree with what Tristan was saying there about open justice. And thank you so much again for inviting me to speak. So I'm here today for Gaia, who was my cousin, but I loved her like a sister. She was very distressed and disorientated when she went missing on the 7th of November 2017, and her body was found 11 days later. The challenges that she faced as a young woman living with severe epilepsy and as a survivor of sexual violence inspired her to pursue a career in health and social care. So it's somewhat ironic that I believe neglect by that system contributed to her death. The coroner the following February ruled that she died of hypothermia, but we really call it a death by indifference because as a survivor, Gaia was badly let down by the mental health system and by the justice system, the very same system which we are now trying to navigate in our search for answers. Gaia's inquest is on hold at the moment due to COVID-19, but we have won the right to a full inquest under Article 2, the right to life of the European Convention on Human Rights, and also the right to a jury to examine the role, particularly Dorset Police and healthcare services played in Gaia's death. Beyond the coroner's court, I think one reason that her story has resonated so widely in the press and on social media is that complex and intersectional as it is, it speaks very powerfully to some pressing public interest issues, generational challenges, really, like the fact that, clearer than ever since Me Too, abuse survivors are being routinely let down by the criminal justice system, and the devastating impact that a decade of austerity cuts have had on support services and community mental health provision. Over the past couple of years, I have done some work, started to reach out and engage with other bereaved families through groups like the United Families and Friends campaign, UFFC, and Inquest. And I've seen through that how many of our stories speak to these issues and how powerfully they really chronicle the true cost of these policies, and of state discrimination, whether that's based on race, disability, gender, mental health, that are having really serious consequences, deadly ones sometimes, across the country. And viewed through that lens, for me, it's no wonder that there seems to be a lack of enthusiasm about our stories being heard and these processes being truly open and truly scrutinized. I've seen also how, for most grieving mothers, fathers, children, siblings, and this is something that I really strongly feel too, justice for our loved ones is about preventing future harm. It's about preventing further deaths. So, is a public hearing enough to hold the state to account? We're 3.5 years in and we still haven't even got that far yet. But no. I think, accountability at a low level, at an individual level, or restricted, to the coronial process is almost worthless, frankly, because on its own, it can't deliver change, and change is what we need. It's what our loved ones deserve. It's what bereaved family deserves. And at the end of the day, it's what the public deserves as well.
Thank you. We'll come back to perhaps asking you later what you think would provide good accountability. Marienna, I'm going to come to you next. Obviously, you are clearly very deeply committed to open justice, and you have engaged with the media and you've encouraged journalists to attend the pre-inquest review hearings that have been held so far around Gaia's death. Why have you approached the situation in this way? Not everybody would.
Yeah, and I completely understand why, because it's horrifically painful and really, really scary. But yeah, 2 reasons, I think. I've been involved in social justice work my entire adult life. My background is in media and campaigns. So quite simply, it was something I could do, I guess, is an important part of the answer. That matters a lot, because when you're grieving the preventable death of someone, that you never thought you'd have to live without, it's devastating. And then going through the inquest process on top of that just makes it so much worse. It's extremely re-traumatizing. You have this, real David and Goliath sense that everything's stacked against us, which it is. And we get used to, nothing Tristan just said surprised me or contradicted my own experience of that system. We're really used to having our voices ignored and answers to key questions withheld and our lives left on hold for months into years. And so having something that I can focus on, that I can do, to try and push for positive change in Gaia's name, I guess, is part of how I cope with that reality.
What are you doing it for? What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, so I was going to say the second reason, going back to what I was saying before about what constitutes accountability, right? An apology here, or, a suspension of a low-level employee there, and lots of families, who don't even get that much. That's not accountability. It's very simple. We don't want other families to have to go through this. We don't want to continue to see people to die needlessly, as Tor was saying, for reasons that they're already well documented and that have been through the system, however many times before. We know that these institutions won't change of their own accord. There is not much of a social historical precedent for that. And what we see when we look back is that, steps forward in this regard for justice, for democratic oversight, they're always won by public pressure. And so press scrutiny and public engagement, and social media is an important part of that. That's fundamental to the goal of effecting change and saving lives in the future. I mean, at the moment, it's mostly, my experience anyway, is that it's mostly left to grieving families to get the word out and to platform these stories. We've heard about some of the challenges in the media industry, which I know are very real, and the impact of the cuts on the legal system. But I think that's deeply wrong, and it's something that many families quite simply can't do on their own. Shouldn't ever be expected to do on their own. There is some help to be found. George Julian has been mentioned already, doing really amazing work, live tweeting inquests. great groups like Inquest and UFFC, but it falls far, far short of what bereaved families need and what's needed to protect the public interest. I think it's right that there are questions being asked about why it is that in an inquest, legal representation for the state is financed with public money, whereas many bereaved families are left without any representation at all. But the same disparity exists and is no less important when it comes to the press side of things, to the storytelling side of things, right? Public money pays for press officers acting for the state, the police, healthcare trusts, whatever, to get their voices in the media and, message their PR. And there is nothing no equivalent to amplify the voices of families who need it so much more, I think it's a system. Sorry, I was just going to say, if it is going back to your question about motivation, right? If we accept that the purpose of the system is to find the truth and to make recommendations to safeguard others in the future, then that's the kind of approach that I would expect to see. It's what is needed in order for that system to be fit for purpose, to provide justice and accountability and to make change.
I think that all journalists and lawyers who work in these fields would know very well that there are, not many families who would be able to withstand the pressures of working in a public arena, taking on the concept of communicating with the press at a time of such immense distress. And I think we are really aware of that, but clearly there is a cost. And I'm always very interested in how that cost is borne by families who, as you say, I've never known a family who wanted, compensation or anything other than change. That is what they want. That's the accountability that what they want. They want other people not to have to go through what they've gone through. Yeah. But what is the cost that you bear to demand that accountability in the forthright and persistent way that you do?
That's a really difficult question. It's very hard. It's a weird experience for me because, of course, I have professional experience of doing similar things and engaging with the press and advocacy, and then, to find yourself pushing for the thing and speaking on the panels that you never in your worst nightmares would have imagined would have a place for you. The toll that it takes is huge, and of course it's a double impact for families because the erosion of the support services often that the person who's died we're dependent on are also not there for the families, right? So it's this horrible feeling of, certainly I think for us, re-experiencing the same kind of risk and neglect and sense of abandonment that we had in the run-up to Gaia's death, when we were trying to get support for her and justice for her in life. So it's a very heavy price, but comparing it to the alternative, personally, I couldn't contemplate anything else. And I think, for me, having seen it from the inside now as a bereaved relative, and we've been very lucky, we did qualify for legal aid, and we do have an incredible legal team, and we do have that platform, and seeing how many families are going without that, and how many stories which, really need to be part of these big public conversations that we're having about, what kind of society we want to live in. And to see those so invisible and so silenced by the structures that they have to move through, I can't imagine myself doing anything else now.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to, we've reached 1933, so I'm going to wrap up quite soon, but I wanted to give Marienna an opportunity to talk a little bit about what people could do if they wanted to find out more about Justice for Gaia.
Oh, thank you, Louise. Super simple and easy to remember. Obviously, we are still going through our pre-inquest review process at the moment, so no inquest dates. But in the meantime, as was the case with our, long wait for the IOPC reports and for this whole process to start, don't need to be stopped by a pandemic. It's okay, we won't give up. It really is the public engagement and support, and great support that we've had from some members of the press as well that keep us going. So if you want to find out more about Gaia's story and how you can help, we have an art project going. There's stuff you can do at work, in life. Obviously, sharing on social media and helping us get the word out is just so valuable. So our website is justiceforgaia.com. Gaia is spelled Gaia, and you can also find us at Justice for Gaia on social media. And obviously, just a word more broadly, I think when we talk about open justice, we've talked a lot about the role of families and journalists and people in the legal system, but members of the public also have a really huge role to play in making sure that, you know, their voices are being heard and that we are saying loud and clear that this stuff matters to people. It makes it so much easier for those of us who are embedded in the process if we have, I think everyone would agree, that engaged audience and that support on a wider basis. So please, you know, anything you can do to support us and any bereaved families, whether that's through Inquest or UFFC or other people's work, just there's really no words to explain how much that means to people.
Thank you.